You are listening to StoryMakers, the podcast for women who are ready to step into their true identity, live with meaningful purpose, find belonging and connection, grow in leadership, and walk boldly in faith. Here you can uncover the story that you were created to live because you were made for such a time as this. So we are kicking off a very powerful conversation about the paradigm that shapes your story. I want to start by sharing something called the Pearl Practice. That is my coaching method. I got a few years ago, kind of as a download from the Lord. I'd been doing a lot of work with clients, doing a lot of research about what happens in our mind and how it impacts our emotions and how what we feel influences what we do and don't do, our actions, our inaction. And then our actions, they always have an outcome. They create tangible results. And those results over time, they culminate to become what I call the legacy. It might be a little more intangible than the results, but ultimately, if you get the same result again and again and again, this becomes that legacy that you are operating from and the legacy you impact other people with, the legacy you pass on. So let's talk about what a paradigm is first. And I want to teach you this early on in this show because it is so powerful. It is ultimately the foundation of making any kind of change in your life. If you want transformation, it ultimately comes, the deepest form of transformation comes from working through what's going on in your soul and submitting it to the Lord, right? Just bring it to Jesus. He is the transformation. Coaching is just a tool. Counseling, just a tool, right? All personal growth and development, self-improvement, all of these things, they are just tools that we have in the natural realm. They can never bring the ultimate transformation that Jesus alone can bring, right? So when we look at this and we go, how do we get transformation? Well, we follow the Bible. It tells us to renew our minds. We have the mind of Christ. It's so many places in the Word pointing us back to managing our mind, which is part of our soul. So your soul, again, is the inner being, the container for your mind, emotions, will, and your personality. And you are uniquely, wonderfully, fearfully formed so that these things would be unique to you, like your fingerprint. You've got your outer body, very unique to you, and then your innermost being is the spirit within you that comes alive and is born again when you meet Jesus and submit your life and your heart to Him, right? And say, yes, I want to follow you. Well, in the soul, you've got the mind, which is a very powerful container for the paradigm. It's the internal framework, and you use it to make sense of yourself and others and God and the world and circumstances and events and everything that's happening. And it's not just what you believe, it's actually what you perceive in the long run. So it consists of what we would say is like four maybe interconnected layers. All of these layers, they dovetail. I like to see a beautiful puff pastry, but I might be hungry. So the first one is beliefs. These are the core convictions that you hold to be true. So they're subconscious. They are shaped by your upbringing, your culture, your trauma, spiritual experiences, all of these things. And let's just say, for example, I'm only valuable if I succeed. My parents only see value in who I am if I succeed in sports or college or medicine or whatever, right? That's this belief. Like I only matter if I do what they need me to do, want me to do. The next layer is your thoughts, and these are daily repeated mental scripts, and they stem from beliefs at times, but also There are a lot of thoughts going around that you do not have to choose because it's your choice. If you are mindful about your mind and thoughtful about your thoughts, then you actually become somebody who sees a thought and has it. It's right here. And you could say, no, I don't want that thought. That's stupid. It works against me. It doesn't serve me. It's not truth. Like, God wouldn't agree with that. I'm not going to believe that. Like, I'm not going to think on it, because everything that you're thinking is actually going to develop more into your imagination and to your beliefs. And the imaginations, that's the next layer. So thoughts, that's like they form that running commentary, right? It's reinforcing everything that you believe. So they're actually cycling between one another. It's a thought like, they probably think I'm not good enough at this. They probably think I'm not smart. Whatever. So you're just having these thoughts, and they're connected to the belief. So if you believe that you're only valuable if you succeed, then you're going to have thoughts that are connected to that belief. And your imagination, it's like the internal pictures, scenarios that you allow to mentally be rehearsed and processing through your mind. So a lot of times, what do we do? Because God gave us our imagination, so it's not wrong to use it, but everything can be used for good or evil. And the imagination, if left to its own and it's not guided and directed, it's going to fill in the blanks. Anytime that you feel confused, you don't have enough information, it's going to project fears and even project hope or make assumptions. So that's like imagining a conversation with somebody, but in that conversation that you imagine, you're rejected. You're left out. You're overlooked, right? You imagine what they think about you. All of that flows into the layer of interpretation. This is your filter. And it's the meaning that you assign to whatever is happening. What you think about the person, the meaning that you have about, like, this person showed up. What does that mean? The car parked on the street with its lights turned off that I know doesn't belong to a neighbor, right? I can ascribe meaning to that and say somebody is, maybe they're taking photos of my house, or they've got binoculars and they're looking, maybe they're going to try to rob my house. Or I could be like, man, DoorDash is lost again. That's my interpretation using my imagination. And it's very easy to do and can go either way. So two people can actually go through the same experience in the same moment. This is what siblings say all the time. Like, did we have the same parents? Did we grow up in the same house? They interpret it completely differently because it's coming from their original design, the way their brain works, the way they manage their mind or don't. And interpretations of something are almost always different than the intention behind it. So if you're looking at the phone, you see those three little dots like sitting there cycling, right? And you go, well, they didn't text back. I must have said something wrong. Well, it's funny because you think, like, the intention of that person, maybe they're not texting because the toilet just overflowed or a kid fell down the stairs. And all you're thinking about is how you think your last text was so stupid that they became, like, they put the phone down and they're so rude that they cut off the conversation without so much as like a see you later, alligator. You know what I mean? Like, you are so focused on you and your interpretation and your imagination, thoughts, and belief system. Your whole paradigm is about you. And really, they just put the phone down, or they didn't see, or mom called, or something like that, right? All four of these layers, they feed each other. Your beliefs produce thoughts, which shape your imagination, which color your interpretation. And then they confirm your beliefs. So it actually creates a feedback loop. And that's why you get stuck in the same emotional cycles, even when your circumstances change, because it's not always about what's happening around you. It's always about what's happening within you. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says that we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to make it obedience to Christ. I'm going to teach you how to take your thoughts captive in an episode in the future. It is easier than you think. And it's funny because I feel like in the Bible, it tells you to take your thoughts captive, to make them obedient to Christ. But then there's like, how do I actually do that? What does it look like in my daily life? And I'm going to teach you. Romans 12:2 urges us to be transformed not by doing more, but by renewing our mind, which we have the mind of Christ as believers. God invites us, basically, through all of these scriptures, to confront our paradigm, not just the behavior, but the paradigm. Like I tell my kids all the time, you're right, your behavior is not your identity. When you look at your kids and your husbands and you go, wow, their behavior is not their identity, you can actually invite God to show you, what's he think about them? Because that's how he looks at us. Our behavior is not our identity. Our identity is that we are wonderfully and fearfully made, but we keep doing things. And sometimes we're stupid, right? When your paradigm shifts, your whole story, the entire storyline that you're living out, it begins to shift. You can actually take personal responsibility here and start leading yourself well so that you can begin to co-write the next part of your story with God. So here's a big question you can wrestle with a little bit. What if the narrative you're living in, the storyline, what if it's not broken, but the beliefs that are threading through it, those are broken? What if they're out of alignment with the truth? We all live from a set of beliefs, and some of them were handed to us. Some of them we picked up. Some of them we just allowed to happen, and we kept them. Pain, experience, culture, all of these things. And these beliefs, or what I call really the paradigm, is like the lenses that shape how we see ourselves, the world, God, others, events, situations we find ourselves in. So belief systems are formed subconsciously. Each thought we think is like, it's like walking a trail in the brain. So the more we think it, the more worn and automatic that trail becomes. Or think of it as like a road, a paved road. It's called neuroplasticity. And over time, the brain itself wires itself to expect and follow the path or the freeway without questioning it. It's easier for your brain to stay on the path that you've already created for it than it is to change. That's why it's hard to change habits. It's hard to quit doing things. Your brain is like, but that is what we do. So if you repeatedly think, I'm not good enough, I have to earn love, things never work out for me, then your brain begins to treat those things as truth, even though they might be a lie. And repetition reinforces reality, and most belief systems are formed not by these big dramatic moments that happen in our lives, but by the repeated thoughts we have about them. So these thoughts are really often just unconscious thoughts. They happen to us. They just like, we're not being mindful about our minds. So it's the thoughts they land. And they're shaped by obviously our experiences in childhood and in adulthood, cultural messaging, the places that we are raised, the regions, the countries, the family, the household, the language. And I'm not talking about English or Spanish or German in your family. I'm talking about your love language, the way you speak, the polite or honest, sarcastic, or always, tiptoeing. It's all of those things. Your church, your school systems, trauma or rejection or pain, like all of these things. And because these thoughts repeat internally, they feel familiar. And what happens is that familiarity, we mistake it for truth. We think that what is familiar to us is truth. Beliefs then create filters. So when a belief is formed, we start filtering everything through it. And so if you believe you're unworthy, then a compliment might actually feel like a lie. Or maybe you get suspicious. Why did they tell me I looked nice tonight and they didn't try to get something from me? Because I know I don't look nice. This was a stupid dress to wear. Like, look at everybody else. I don't even fit in. And then somebody told me my dress is nice, whatever, right? So it's like your belief system says that this is truth. You've agreed that this is true. So when somebody else tells you that it's not true, you don't believe them. I see this happen a lot between like kids and moms. And kids think like, oh, she's just saying that because she's my mom or even my dad, but they don't believe it about themselves. If you believe you're rejected, you'll notice every moment of distance and miss all the moments of connection, right? So it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle or prophecy. Your thoughts confirm your beliefs and your beliefs interpret your experiences, right? There's so a couple of scriptures, Proverbs 23:7 comes to my mind, like, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. As a woman thinks in her heart, so is she. Well, Romans 12:2 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. See, God calls us to intentionally interrupt the subconscious loops and replace them with truth. He not just tells us to do it, he gives us truth. He shows us how to do it. He tells us that if we think this, it is who we become. That we have the ability to renew our mind, that leads to transformation. But transformation doesn't start in your behavior, it starts in your belief. It's in your paradigm, because your paradigm, that's what influences your emotions, which influences your actions. So the problem is that most people are never stopping to kind of examine the paradigm, the beliefs, the thoughts, the imaginations, the interpretations, like the lenses. Like everybody's walking around with a pair of glasses that is very specific prescription to them, but nobody's looking at the prescription and going, is this the best thing for me? Is it this prescription letting me see what is true? Is it keeping me from seeing certain things that I need to see? Is it allowing me to see things that are not real? Are there mirages? Like, is there AI going on in here? Like virtual reality, things that are not real because it's so connected to imagination? And we live from the stories that we didn't necessarily choose. So especially in your childhood, your brain is wired. God gave you a mind and a brain that could cope with everything that's happening, because in your child's brain, it does not yet have the full capacity to interpret things with discernment and truth. So it must explain itself. Like, what is happening in the world? Why did my parents want another baby? Was I not enough? Why did we have to move across the country? Did I do something wrong? Right? Why do my parents get divorced? It was me. And so the children have to come up with the brain will come up with a storyline to explain what is happening, but then we grow into adulthood. And if we're not mindful about what's going on in our minds, we take that storyline and we believe it for the rest of our lives. So you might believe things like you're only valuable if you're productive, or you might think your past defines you, or if you don't have it all together, you're not worthy of writing a book, coaching somebody, leading other people, being a mom, right? I am too much. I am not enough. All of these things. You can believe them, but it doesn't make them a fact. What if they aren't? What if it's just a false paradigm? A story that needs a rewrite? The kingdom of God flips the world's paradigms upside down. And the world tells us to do more and be more. But God's like, you are already chosen. You're already loved. You are already worthy. And look what Jesus did on the cross for you. The world says that your purpose is found in how hard you work, in your hustle, in your successes. But Jesus says, come abide in me, because apart from me, you can do nothing. And then culture tells you, define yourself, find yourself, and then prove yourself. But scripture says you were fearfully, wonderfully made with purpose, prepared in advance for you to walk in. So think about these things that you may have allowed to become a belief and a paradigm that you operate from, and you haven't traded it in for what is kingdom truth. So that's why the Pearl framework, that all of it starts with a paradigm, because what you believe about God, yourself, and your story actually will determine how you feel, what you do, the results you get, and ultimately the kind of legacy you leave. So transformation begins in the mind. And if you want to change your life, you have to confront what's going on in your belief system, in your paradigm. It really won't be until you ask God to show you the truth that all of the layers start to peel back so you can see it, like Shrek told the donkey, the layers of the onion, or maybe it was a donkey told Shrek, I can't remember. What you're going to find underneath is that you don't need to become different or more or be less or be better. You just need to believe what's already actual truth. So let's talk about real quick how you begin shifting your paradigm. First of all, you have to identify what it is. You define this paradigm you're operating from. It's something out of order. It's a lie. It's something that is not full truth, right? It's in your paradigm, so you believe it, you think it, you imagine it, and it's the lens you interpret through. So you need to get honest here, because God already knows what it is. Even if it's a new idea to you, when you start looking to identify what's going on in your paradigm, it might be fresh to you, but God's like, yeah, I know. So think about it. What's a belief you're carrying around that you've been believing for a long time, but it actually doesn't serve you well, or it just doesn't align with the truth now that you think about it? And then go find the truth. What does God say about who you are? Listening prayer is awesome for this. Just sit and wait for him to speak to you. Go look it up in the Word, write it all down, and meditate on it and remind yourself. And then replace and repeat. So it's the great exchange. Offer the lie that you've been, that's been in your paradigm forever, however long, and offer it up to the Lord and just ask him to give you the truth in exchange for the lie. It's not a one-time fix. It's a daily and intentional decision to renew your mind with kingdom truth. So this is not just some spiritual idea. This is a real biological process at work. It's brain research. And our thoughts, they don't live in a vacuum. Every thought we think sends a signal to our brain, and then our brain responds by producing biochemical messages that we experience as what we call emotions. So in other words, what's happening in your mind creates what you feel in your body, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. So your StoryMaker challenge this week is to sit and think, journal, whatever works for you. A belief I've carried that no longer serves me now that I recognize it is this. And then follow that up with the truth I choose instead is this. And then go find Romans 12:2 and Ephesians 2:10 and write them out and meditate. Get in the Ziploc and marinate in those things. And then if you want to go deeper, ask the Lord, what story am I living from and what story are you inviting me into? And obviously, I'm going to have to say, if any of this resonates with you, please subscribe to the show, leave a review, and most importantly, share this with somebody who is ready to rethink her story. So let's keep making space for people to know who they are, live from truth, lead with purpose. And let's do this together because you are a story maker. We're building something eternal. We're starting from the inside out. We're going all the way. We're going to finish the race. So until next time, stay rooted in the Word, stay hopeful in Christ, and keep showing up in your story. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss any new episodes. And to learn more about me, my work, and how we can connect, visit sterlingandstonementoring.com or check the show notes. And until next time, remember, all things are possible and figure-outable.